evening.
I'd like to call the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District June 8th, 2015 monthly board meeting to order. Please rise.
I'd like to have a moment of silence for 9 firemen in the U.S. that have lost their lives this past month. Then I'll follow that with a prayer. Dear God, we come to you and we want to ask that you'll be with those families that have lost a loved one, of those that have served faithfully, protecting the lives of others. We thank you for their sacrifices and what they did to help others. We pray, Lord, that you will bless them and watch over them in eternity. Lord, we ask for your guidance and direction as always. Ask for your protection for the firemen here in Bonita, and that you'll watch over them and keep them safe and surround them with your care, be with their families, and encourage them each day. Lord, give the commissioners and the leaders and the administrators wisdom and guidance as they lead this department to help make our community a better place. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, I need approval of the May 11, 2015 regular board meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One motion for the approval of the May 2015 financials, May 2015 and current expenditures, acknowledgement of financial report, acknowledgement of wire transfers and transfers between accounts.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is presentations of annual service pin.
Good evening, gentlemen. I would like to acknowledge the annual service pin of Assistant Fire Marshal Cornell Lee, who's been here 10 years. I do not believe he's in the crowd, but I just wanted to recognize his service. Cornell Lee started 10 years ago and has an extensive history in public service from Hawaii and other parts of the country. And he came here, and I believe he started off as an administrative assistant, and went to inspector school, got his inspector's license, and worked his way up to his position of assistant fire marshal today. So 10 years ago, he started here, and he has been of a great value to the organization, and he's made a big difference in our prevention division. And I just wanted to recognize his service and our appreciation for what he does, specifically my appreciation for what he does for the district. So thank you. He's not here, but thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Operations Infrastructure Strategic Review. Yep.
We'll have it up on the big screen here. Well, that I can't see. I've got to be able to read something.
A flashlight?
Yeah. Yeah, as long as. As long as the board can see this up here, as long as everybody else can see the other video or screen, that's fine. That's fine. Make sure my machine works here. Okay, gentlemen, I thought it was a good time in the organization, especially prior to the budget this year, that we do basically what I am calling a operational infrastructure strategic review for the fire district. This is basically aimed at giving the board and the community an understanding of where we are today, what's happening today, and some of our operations, then the way we run them today, and what we can look at for future of Bonita Springs over the next few years. First, I'd like to do an overview. Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District is currently experiencing growth. In preparation of increased construction, population expansion, and the current and future fire rescue service demands, we offer an executive summary of the operations infrastructure strategy options. To go over the staffing a little bit that we have currently in our district, the comprehensive staffing is as such as you see. The fire district currently has 96 employees, broken down as 4 chief officers, meaning administrative chief officers, 8 administration support, that's directors, coordinators, assistants, maintenance, and logistics, 8 prevention personnel, including fire marshal, inspectors, and the assistant fire marshal, which we recognize tonight, and 2 training officers who are 40-hour employees, and 74 suppression personnel. This does not include the 2 part-time positions that we have filled at this time. So overall, the administrative support staffing and support staff is comprised of approximately 14% of the total district personnel. So according to emergency services consultant, independent fire districts typically maintain a ratio between 15 and 18%, depending on the organizational specific needs. So we are below what typically is expected of independent fire districts. Many times they have a higher percentage because we do our own HR, we have our own billing, we do everything in-house. All of our administrative support is done inside, our own finance department. So that's why it is typically a little bit higher than other types of fire departments or districts. Our emergency response staffing. Bonita Springs staffs engine companies with 4 firefighters, EMTs, paramedics per engine. That's in accordance with NFPA 1710. However, at minimum staffing, 3 firefighters per engine company is typical. Therefore, a second unit must respond to many emergencies to comply with OSHA regulations. I put the number down there in case anyone wants to look it up. But the regulation states that 4 firefighters must be present in air packs to enter an atmosphere considered immediately dangerous to life and health. Now what this means is anytime a firefighter has to go into a situation where they need an air pack, which in today's environment is almost any situation, for example, car wrecks with gas leaks in the house, unknown odors, anything that could be dangerous when we get a call for, we call it the 2 in, 2 out rule. You have to have 2 in and you have to have 2 out with air packs in order to just handle the situation. Now, the only time you can go into a IDLH, as we call it, atmosphere, is if there's known life safety. So you run into a situation where you may have, and I'm just going to use a gas leak for an example, in someone's house. There may be nobody in that house, but we still would have to wait to have a 2 in, 2 out scenario to send somebody in to check it out, because we're not sure. If we are sure that there's no immediate life danger in that situation, we typically will wait to make sure we can be in compliance and make sure we have a rapid intervention team ready to respond. Just an idea of the way it works. As many of you know, and I don't want to reiterate too much because a lot of this is in the annual report, we do provide fire suppression, advanced life support, medical response, hazardous materials mitigation, water rescue response, high angle rescue, trench rescue, confined space, auto extrication, and I'm sure there's a couple that I'm missing here, but I didn't want to overemphasize that information that you can find in our annual report. So standard operating guidelines. This is how we run our calls. Now when we look at how do we develop standard operating guidelines, this is important. because countywide fire, medical, and special operations standard operating guidelines are established by the Lee County Fire Chiefs Association and Lee County Emergency Management to guarantee a consistent emergency response in conjunction with regional resources and a federally mandated incident command system. This is what is mandated by the government, that we have to follow an incident command system. When I say this, our SOGs are established. For example, when we have a brush fire in Lehigh, many of you know, we send multiple units from multiple districts. These for fires, and we send one of our brush trucks, and we have what you call a strike team or task force that gets sent out to these areas to provide fire protection. Now, we just don't send them out not knowing what they're doing and not knowing what the other organizations are doing. We train with them, and we make sure everybody is on the same page when we go out to these calls. And these are the guidelines that are set by meetings between the operations chiefs, the chief staff here, and myself, and we put into play. And why is that important for Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District? Well, it's important to me and our men and the district because I need to know that when I send, or we send, one of our troops to north of town somewhere, San Carlos, Iona McGregor, Cape Coral, wherever it is, that if they get in a Mayday situation where their life's in danger, that their incident commanders have been trained to the same standard and follow the same exact operating guidelines that we do. That is the only way that we can guarantee that the safety of our men and women. And they can guarantee the safety of their men and women when they send them to our district, that we have all been trained on the same protocols. Because we're not big enough as Bonita Springs to handle large-scale incidents. We rely on the Chiefs Association SOGs to be able to provide the adequate level of service that is expected of our community. Emergency medical response. The Bonita Springs Fire District operates ALS engines within the Lee County EMS system. Now, it's important to know that ambulance transport is not an EMS system. As a component of this system, Lee County grants a certificate of need, a COPCN, to allow the Bonita Springs Fire District to provide ALS medical services to our citizens. So, some of you who have been around understand that COPCN is a license that is granted by the county. When we get our COPCN just for our ALS engines, we have to fill out a form, apply to the county, make sure we meet their criteria, and respond in the same manner that their system wants us to respond in. Now, they can deny us a COPCN. Of course, they're denying us a COPCN for ambulance transport now when we're trying to enhance the system. So that's part of the issue. That's one of our arguments, is we want to enhance our system and they're still denying us. But every 2 years, we reapply and we have to put our vehicles that we have down there. Once we have a COPCN from the county, we go to the state. The state has a list that they check out and they say, okay, you have a COPCN. Now we're going to check all your vehicles. We're going to check all your people. We're going to make sure they meet all the criteria, and they respond. They can respond in a method that's congruent with what the state functions as, how the state wants you to function as an ALS provider. So that's how it works. Well, the district must provide this documentation to guarantee Lee County that we will operate within Lee County's two-tiered system. That's how they grant us a COPCN. They say, okay, you're going to be first response ALS, and we're going to come in after you. Now, this isn't actually a real two-tier system. A real two-tier system has a BLS first response. But because they found that if a critical patient survival rate drops 10% every minute, ALS is not on scene. Yes?
Explain BLS and LS for the others.
BLS is basic life support. Essentially, that's CPR and automatic defibrillator. But what they were finding, and I'll get into some of the systems here in a second, what they were finding was that BLS, when they would get the call takers in the EMS system, like I said, ambulance transport is not an EMS system. I'll give you just a quick example of that. When you call 911, This is why it's not a system, it's part of it's just a particular facet of a system. When our fire trucks get to a scene, first the call taker takes the call. The call taker determines who's going to the call. The call taker decides who needs what at the call when they receive it. We don't decide, people on the ambulance don't decide, I don't decide. Who decides is the call taker under the countywide EMS system. They say, okay, you need X amount of people, you need an ambulance, you need a fire truck. Depending on what the call is, they dispatch us, and I'll get into the MPDS program here in a second. So once that is done, then that's when our ALS comes out. I'm not sure if I was answering your questions.
You answered BLS, but you didn't answer ALS.
Okay. ALS is where you have the paramedic component in which we can provide intubations, IVs, medications, things that somebody needs to survive a critical incident. Advanced life support. BLS is a process that is basically to keep somebody alive until ALS gets there, if they can, depending on the circumstance. So, did that pretty much summarize the way the Lee County EMS system works? But the point was, I want to make this point because it's very important, is when one of our lieutenants or firefighters are on a scene, what they do is if they'll activate almost the entire emergency response 911 system, because when they call trauma alert, or they call cardiac alert, or they call whatever it is that they decide that they determine the call is, that activates another component of the EMS system, which is the trauma center. So that lieutenant on scene can activate a bunch of doctors up there in the trauma center hospital to be standing in the OR like this because of a decision that they're making on the ground, or the helicopter, either one. So it's an entire system. You know, that our first response is one part of that system. The call taker is another part of that system. The helicopter is another part of that system. The doctors in the trauma alert center are part of that system. The cardiac centers are part of that system, as well as the stroke centers are part of this two-tiered system that we run here. So we'll get into some dynamic versus static deployment. Dynamic deployment model is a system status management, which was developed by Jack Stout in 1983. Now, this is a non-station-based deployment. Now, what this did back in 1983, this gentleman, Jack Stout, created a system where you had roving ambulances that were roving around, and it was based on a program, a computer program that would predict where the next call was going to happen based on the time of day, which is called chronological. That's how we base it on. What time of day is the most calls happen, and also not only what time, but geographically where they happen. This is 1983. So he would route the ambulances into these areas that would be considered the most, where they thought were mostly going to happen. Now this is actually an ambulance system. This is not a fire system. This was actually based on ambulances, which we don't have ambulances, but that's what this system was based on. And that is a dynamic deployment model. Now, a static deployment model is geographical. This is a station-based response that is utilized for uniform and strategic deployment of resources. What this is what the old fire departments used to do. They would have, this is your station location, you do not go outside of this location, draw a line in the sand, this is where you work, right here. Some of you who've been in the business know what I'm talking about. And you didn't leave your geographical location, which cost, and we had it here when I worked here. I think Dan Gorley, somebody might remember, drew a line on I-75 that we were not supposed to pass. If that happened, I'm not sure, but I heard that was a rumor. Sorry, Dan. But so what the Lee County EMS system utilizes, now this is the cutting edge, newest technology that we have. Lee County EMS system utilizes a combination of static and dynamic deployment. This includes Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District. okay? We go anywhere in the county, anytime, doesn't matter where we are, we get calls, we go to it. In fact, Deputy Chief Giuliano was driving home to the Cape. They called him on the radio and says, there's a car wreck 2 blocks from you. Can you pull over? Sure. He pulled over and handled a car wreck. So now how this works, and I'm going to tie this in a little bit, and we're just moving along, but the medical priority dispatch system, basically how this works, it's just this book right here. This book says Alpha level, Bravo, or Charlie level calls. What is to be sent? Alpha call is BLS. A Bravo call is BLS, which is a little bit more serious. Charlie calls an ALS. Delta calls an ALS. Echo calls are cardiac arrest, just like Delta calls, I believe, are, I want to say they're respiratory arrest. So when you go through this flip guide, you say, okay, well, and actually somebody said this to me, and it might have been one of you, it says, well, what are you going to send on a bee sting? Well, I said, well, I don't know. It depends on what the call taker who receives the call and dispatch people will say. The first thing they ask is it a bee sting? I don't know why you're calling 911. It's a bee sting. Are you having shortness of breath? Yes, you need an ALS response. Are you having difficulty speaking? Yes. Do you have an allergic reaction? Yes. So these are all Charlie level calls where you need a minimum of 4 people to respond, ALS, according to the guidelines, according to EMS guidelines. So they determine who they're going to call on that. And most people don't call EMS for a bee sting. Same thing with an elevator call. Somebody stuck in an elevator. Who are you going to send? Ambulance or fire truck? Well, it all depends. Somebody in that elevator having chest pain, having shortness of breath. We don't know. As a fire department, we don't know. We just know what the call taker is telling the people up front, and they're giving us the resources that we have to dispatch to this. So that's how it works. And this is very common. This is a national standard for medical priority dispatch. And sometimes, and one of the good examples is, sometimes there may be, a lifting help that may be considered an alpha level call. And we've had it before here. And they say, well, you only need an ambulance. Well, that's good. And maybe that's true. They may only need an ambulance. But they may be waiting, even though the fire truck's right there, they may be waiting 15 or 20 minutes for somebody to come pick them up when their family member's laying in between the toilet and the bathtub. Because it's not a priority call. We've had it dispatched, and people get diverted for higher level calls, ambulances, of course. So the idea is, why not just send the people who are closest, who can take care of it in 2 minutes instead of wait, for a longer period of time. And that's a lot of times what happens. But in the end, when you have automatic vehicle locators that can locate every single truck in the entire county, where they are, where they're going, what they're doing, it is a total dynamic response. We've gone up to Fort Myers for fires. They've come down here for fires. So, and when Lee County gets blown out and their ambulances are all busy, they send their ambulances down here because we have minimal acceptable coverage, which they typically will have to send somebody here. And where do they send them? They send them to one of our fire stations. So Lee County doesn't use a dynamic deployment. They don't use a static deployment. They use the modern technology of what we have here today, which is a static, dynamic deployment based on GPS and the locations of all the calls in the whole county and the resources needed. So just want to make sure everybody understands that, because that's important in the way we do business. In fact, we were joking. We said when Lee County EMS left the fire stations, they didn't go sit around anywhere in Bonita. They went to where? Hotel. All hotels on 41, so that wasn't, but we're over that, thank goodness. So that's the way the Lee County EMS system works. Our emergency response objective. The Bonita Springs Fire Board and Fire Commissioners adopted a performance objective of achieving a less than 6-minute response 85% of the time. This time was adjusted from the 90th percentile as a result of street connectivity issues that lengthened the travel time for secluded neighborhoods, and that was from a couple studies that we did a few years ago. The performance goal was taking into consideration a 1-minute turnout time with 5-minute travel time. So now we're getting into a lot of the meat of what we're doing here. Mostly everybody in this room understands the way we're staffed. We have our Station 21 has 1 engine, 1 light rescue, and a heavy rescue. That heavy rescue is not staffed. That's a jump truck. Station 22, 1 engine and 1 rescue boat. Station 23, 1 engine, 1 brush truck. Station 24, 1 engine, 1 brush truck. Station 25, 1 truck company. Okay, here we go. We got the East Bonita Station location. Bonita Springs owns approximately 1 acre located east of Village Walk community. This service area of the proposed station can be expected to service approximately 5,000 residences or 10 to 12,500 people. That's been upgraded because the fire marshal and I did a little more investigation. We have the residences at Village Walk have 1,697, Palmyra 1,352, and I'll go over this in a map. The Preserve of Silverstone 905, Bonita National 1,601, Bonita Active Adults going to have 799. That's a total of 6,354 doors out east of Bonita where that location would be responsible for. So an interesting thing is, well, let me see what the next slide is real quick. Okay. An interesting thing is somebody asked me, well, how many calls do we run out there? Well, right now, as of year-end date, I think it was Thursday, the assistant chief ran the numbers. We ran 209 calls in Village Walk and Palmyra. So you say, when we're talking about emergency response, you say, well, is it important? What's the number? What is the number that would be required to open a station? I don't know, is it 30 calls a month, 60 calls a month, 40, 200 calls a year? That's one every, day and a half? Maybe, something like that. Or is it how many people you have? Well, I think you got to take all that into consideration, including response times, how many people you have, what you expect it to be, and those types of information. So when we look at this map here, I don't know if my pointer's working that far. Can you guys see it on there? Probably not. It's not showing up.
Oh, I see it.
Okay, you see, it's hard to see. That area right there, well, actually, this area right here in the yellow, I want to explain something about this map, too. This map was done in one of the studies we did years ago, but it doesn't change the information because this is based on our current station location and what you can expect for response times from the locations of the stations. Okay, so if you see, get away. I don't know how to do it with the microphone, but anyway, if you see down here where the Village Walk location is, can you see it? It's right down here with my little thing swirling around. The yellow is a 7-minute response, and the red is a 9-minute response, and the green is 5-minute response. Now that doesn't take into account the 1-minute turnout time, so you can add a minute. The green shows an extra minute, so it's actually 6 minutes. So everything basically down in the Village Walk area, we're looking at 8 to 10-minute response times with the way the stations are set up now. This is theoretical. This is done, so what we can expect with the street connectivities and what our locations are now and our resources. So you see that, and obviously you can see up near the beach here where we start getting into a 8-minute response time, 9-minute response time. That's right around there. And then you can look at where we got that property now off of Strike Lane just recently. These are 9-minute response times in here. This is my neighborhood. Back here, 8, 9-minute response times. Of course, you go up into Estero. So we'll look at some of the other information over in that area. So this is a snapshot of what we could expect with our station layouts. Now this is a little bit, once again, I want to show you this map. This map was made, some of it is, the only thing that's not exactly true is if you look down here at Station 4, half of this information was done before Station 4 was built. But in any event, so that you can mark this all green in here. In any event, you got the red here, that's 10-minute response times, 11-minute response times out here. You can see the same area up near Strike Lane where we have the station. You've got 8, 9, 10-minute response times into this area where we bought the property. On the beach, you can obviously see the same. And up here, this is Spring Creek, okay? Now, we don't respond to that anymore because of our AVL closest unit response, like I was discussing before. Estero's the closer unit. So Estero responds there and cuts that response time there. So essentially, you know, and when I did I wanted to make sure that this was correct because it was a little old. So I looked up some calls we recently had. Zamora Court, which is in Village Walk, which is out here, 11-minute response time. Xenon Way, 10 minutes and 51 response times. The other one was 10:50. I rounded up to 11, but 10:50 is the actual number. Bonita National, a 9-minute response time. That's with no traffic or neighborhoods. Village Walk Park, when I said Village Walk Palmyra, had 200 calls. Did I change it? Okay. Let me go back, see if there's anything I was missing. No. So the current response today correlates. So when we look at today, this is our travel time to the back. That red line shows the travel time from Station 4 to the back of Village Walk. This is where we're getting the 11-minute response times here. Okay? This shows Hunters Ridge, Worthington, Palmyra, Village Walk. This is where the station is right here. So you can see those numbers that I gave you just pulling up some samples, that's 11-minute response time, which is out of what the board determined would be acceptable. And this would be in the response zone where the Palmyra and Village Walk is of the Station 6 should the board decide that they would like to move forward. Of course, you can look out in Bonita National, and it's even an extended period. Now, see all this area in here that I'm swinging my little light around in, that's all going to be developed. That's where we pulled all the permits, Tim?
That's where they apply for the development orders.
Yeah, that's where they're all applying for the development orders. So that's going to make up the other 4,000 homes out here. Or, 3,500 homes aside from Village Walk. I think it was something like that. Okay, so right now, we're looking at from Bonita Fire Station 4 to Bonita Grand Drive to Village Walk. We're looking at basically a 4.5 miles and 11-minute response. Okay.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
I think you said that this response times did not include the 1-minute turnout time?
Those were just shown. That's a good question. These right here are simply as MapQuest does, and surprisingly, MapQuest is very accurate with our response times. We checked them, but they're very accurate. This does not include the 1-minute turnout time.
Okay, so you got to add a minute to that.
You would add a minute to that.
What is the delay? I'm sorry. What is the delay for the what do I want to say? Dispatch. I mean, you're saying
Yeah.
11 minutes
Yeah.
from the time you get the call. What about from the time the 911 call comes in?
That's a very good question. They go by this medical priority dispatch system, and what they do is they ask the initial series of calls. Okay, I'm having bee sting. Initial questions. They say, I'm having a bee sting. Are you having difficulty breathing? Yes. They dispatch. They dispatch the ALS component. They dispatch an ambulance and a fire truck to that call. And then they resume with the questioning after that. So it's fairly immediate. It's within a few seconds of determine. That's why these questions were developed to be able to allow the least amount of delay in getting a unit en route.
So it's a matter of seconds, is what you're saying?
I would say,
Less than a minute?
yeah, it depends on the call, but I would say, yeah, less than a minute,
Okay.
30 seconds or so, approximation.
Chief, there's another thing that I think we may be overlooking too out there with the road connectivity. With road connectivity comes traffic accidents that we don't deal with out there that often now because the traffic is substantially lighter than it would be in the middle of town, obviously. With Logan coming through and all that more traffic, besides the medical calls for, the normal medical calls, I think we'll probably see a substantial increase in motor vehicle crashes out in that area, too.
Yes, sir.
Chief, quick question. Since Hickory Boulevard's in my district, the closest one is,
Station 2.
Mango.
Yes, sir.
And in season, what is the time to get to, I know you guys have one way at north end of Hickory Boulevard. What is the response time in season for that area?
I'm going to do the whole next part of this presentation is on the Hickory Boulevard issue. No problem, sir. Okay, so moving right along, this shows what we anticipate Logan coming through right here, and here's the area where we have the property. Okay. These are just some snapshots from the view from the top course of the property. I put up a couple pictures in here just in case people didn't know. That's the corner of Village Walk. In that corner right here is where our property is. That's just a street view. Okay. Before we even get into cost, I think if we say to let the board understand what we anticipate, if we're running 209 calls now, in the next 3 to 4 years, it's a very good possibility we could be running 400 to 600 calls or even more. With Logan going through supposedly to be finished by 2020, that's not outside of our expectations of what we see in our stations right now with the population that we have in each station being, 45,000 more or less out of season, adding an extra, 12,000 people out there will obviously, increase our call load. And we're looking at, like I said, 3 to 4 years. The expecting time to build a station, to be on the conservative side, would be about 3 years. We could probably handle a little bit quicker, but there's a lot of factors that go in. Anybody who's been involved with building fire stations understand there are a lot of factors that can go along with that. I just want the public to understand that too. When we look at a structure, when we did an RFP about a year and a half ago, Lisa, was it? 2 years? Year and a half ago? It was estimated using the same design that we used for Station 2 was $1.6 million for the station. So these are ballparks. These are things that we can discuss in the board in the budget workshop. We'll have more specific numbers if the board decides that we want to start moving ahead with any project this year. I just wanted to remind the board very briefly that we did start a capital improvement plan to address our station situations as we have them now. We did that last budget year. It's an ongoing process. We can look at the ladder truck, and just so you know, when we looked at this, the ladder truck was put in there as opposed to an engine simply because we have one ladder truck in the district and we could use another one for ISO ratings, and typically it would help us. Not necessarily that truck would go out there, a ladder truck, but we could use it somewhere else in the district and put another engine out there.
Explain what a ladder truck does, because most people in the community have said to me that we don't have that many high-rises. But would you just give a brief summary of what ladder trucks do and
Sure.
resolve that? Thank you.
Well, everybody thinks ladder trucks are specifically made for high-rise rescue. That's what they're least used for. They help with anything 4 floors or below if you can get close enough to the building. But what they're actually used for is like an engine company, when they pull up to a structure fire like the one we had in Pelican Landing, they pull, or anywhere else, we pull past the structure to get a view. And one of the things that first engine company is thinking about is the placement of that ladder truck when it comes in. That's one of their primary functions, is where to put that ladder truck. So, well, why? Who's going to be on top of a 1-story building? But what that does is it gives the officer in charge or the commander in charge an entire view of the entire neighborhood. They can see people coming up from the back. They can see all the structures, what side's involved, what sides aren't involved, what the exposures are, what the crews are doing on this side, what's about to collapse, if the roof's about to collapse. These are all invaluable for the officer in charge to be able to make those determinations, not, let alone a elevated master stream, which is 1,000 to 1,200 gallons a minute, depends on who's pumping and how much water you have in the hydrant. But that is the primary function of a ladder truck. They're invaluable in that respect. And every single structure fire we have, that truck goes right up front if we can possibly make it happen. That's why these men are instructed and trained to be the first engine to pull past, get a view of 3 sides of the building, and take a look and say, where am I going to put my valuable ladder truck that comes in? So that's, in a nutshell, what we use it for, and that's every officer on this department, any firefighter that's ever been trained understands that that's one of the key components of apparatus placement. I hope that answered, sir. Yes, sir.
It did. Thank you.
Chief, you indicated that Lee County uses a combination of the static deployment and the dynamic deployment.
Yes, sir.
Would you hazard a guess as to what percentage is?
They don't have any ambulances on roving status. All their ambulances are station-based.
Okay, so what are they doing? They're completely static then, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, it's a static dynamic deployment, which means that you can be dispatched to standby or wherever else they think the next call is going to be based on call load or
Okay.
based on how busy they are, which is the same thing all the fire departments do.
Okay. Well, you indicated that the dynamic deployment was developed in, what, 1983, did you say? Or
Yes, sir, by Jack Stout. System status management, it's actually called.
when did the static deployment model?
That's been
design?
around for a long time.
So that's forever, pretty
Oh,
much.
for as long as I can recall that there were fire
Okay.
stations. Yeah. Did that answer your question, sir?
Mhm.
Okay.
Chief, did Lee County at one time have the deal where the ambulances weren't in a firehouse or they were out kind of like parking lots or roving and things like that?
Actually, they did. They tried a full system status management program, and it didn't work. That was probably 15 years ago, and they moved away from that fairly quickly. And I know that a lot of times that they do some peak staffing, but that's not the same as system status management. They fully got away from system status management. I don't know how long they tried that for. It didn't last very long.
They must have spent $1.5 million on the program.
Yeah.
It lasted maybe
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, they spent a lot of money on the program, and it didn't last. It wasn't working out. What they found was what they found, at least this is from my understanding, is they couldn't adequately protect the entire community at an equal level by doing that, because they were sending ambulances in places that, without getting too technical, that Bonita would be emptied of ambulances, because the program would say it didn't need an ambulance in Bonita, so there would be no ambulances in Bonita.
Did they have any problem maintaining personnel?
Actually, they did, from my recollection.
I think a story I heard about that deployment system was if the same guy had a New Year's Eve party every year, and he'd have 100 people come, and somebody'd always fall down drunk. So the system would make sure there was an ambulance at that party and pull.
It'd bring 3 resources there.
The system could not
Yeah.
differentiate
Yeah.
between,
Yeah.
because there'd been a call there consistently every New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So the computer, and it was kind of funny when we were sitting around having a discussion with the county a few years back about that. That was one of the stories that came up, that it was one of the flaws in
Yeah.
the system.
Well, see, and they claim they do use a dynamic system. It's not a one or the other. We're way more advanced than having one or the other. What we do is we do a combination of both. When they talk about system status today, the portion they're talking about is they're trying to decide where to send a unit to stand by at what station in the county, and that's how they decide. They still have a prediction program, but they decide, okay, where are we? We're really light on ambulances. We're really busy. Where are we going to send it? To Bonita Station 2 or to San Carlos Station 53? That's the way it's working today. It's not fully unfunctional, but it doesn't guide the deployments of any or all ambulances in the county. And they can be overridden, and they are overridden by even our troops who say they need an ambulance, they come.
Well, the
But,
key point there is they send them to a station.
yes, they do. Okay,
Have they very often had more than the 3 ambulances stationed in Bonita by this system that they're employing?
no,
Have we very often had less than the 3?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, I know the question is, and I'll answer it because I know the question is, he says, okay, well, what, if we're in this big 2-tier system, what is the advantage of us having ambulances? Well, the advantage of us having ambulances, we can determine how many there are and where they're stationed and how they're staffed and the qualifications of our people. I mean, they have base qualifications, but it grants local control under the same entity is basically what the advantage that I see from running an ambulance is here in Bonita Springs. But in any event, we would still have to operate under the county system, because if we don't, they just yank our COPCN and we won't be able to function. We all see that. We all know that now, even when we're trying to run under their system. So that's...
Well, I think the key here, too, being at the very southern end of the county, I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in the 80-some% range of all our transports go south. So
Yes, sir.
they're out of the system. They're not,
Yeah.
because we have, that system is not in place with,
Yeah.
it's not a cooperative agreement with Collier County.
Yeah.
So every ambulance that transports from Estero south is heading, or not every, but 80-some% of those
I believe it was
ambulances
88%.
are coming out of the system anyway. So that was another reason that we thought it was a very good idea and would help the county immensely to keep more of their units
Yes,
in
sir.
the rest of the county, so that because of our unique situation in the southern end of the county, we'd only be sending our units out of the county, or most of the time only our units out of the county, instead of pulling them from the rest of the county in their deployment system. So.
Yeah. Any other questions? Or comments? Okay, so personnel costs.
Chief,
For,
I got a question,
Yes, sir.
Chief. Is there, with all the building going in the east side, is there a figure as to the income or what we're going to sustain, the monies we're going to get to sustain the new building and the operation of the manpower there, as far as getting additional new building, new taxes?
I have not run those numbers at this point. We can discuss that at budget time. We'd have to do that based on our millage about the new construction of how many thousands homes, of,
Well, it's a
6,354 times. If that's something that would drive the board's decision, we can certainly,
I'm just more curious, that's all.
yes, sir. We could certainly give that to you.
Can I ask a question about, have you covered your building outlay in your program tonight?
I'm sorry?
The cost of your building program, has that been covered at this point?
Well, I'm working on it. I'm just saying what the structure is. I have not covered the rest of the cost of the project.
And how you're going to pay for it, or?
No, we're going to get into that probably in the budget workshop.
Can I ask you a question now about it?
Sure.
What are your impact fees currently? What have they been over the past 5 or 10 years? Have they been
I'm not
stable,
sure.
or are they competitive or equal to other stations and departments? And also, what are your building inspection fees? Have they been static over recent years? Because I'm guessing that a lot of the cost with this associated with the building of a new station or stations
Mhm.
would be helped considerably by impact fees being as high as they possibly can. And that would appear to be also something that you folks should implement ASAP.
I just didn't know if the board wanted to comment on that.
Well, the ongoing is that with new construction, besides the impact fees, you've got the ongoing tax base that helps pay for the overall operation, which probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it would, with the number of homes that are already designated to go out there, would actually put us over the top without having to raise taxes.
But that's not addressing the impact fee collections that you built towards capital expense.
Well, the impact fee collection is done through the county, and then they distribute it to us. Okay, we don't set that rate, they do.
No, I'm told, past experience tells me that you have a good deal of input in it. They can pass or deny what you ask for. It's up to you folks to present to the commission an amount that you believe should be collected for the construction of the city.
Well, I think that's something that we can discuss at a budget, but I don't think that's an option, but I don't think, I think we need to discuss that at a budget workshop.
Yes, sir. Thank you. What we wanted to look at was a total upfront cost to build that station out there at this time. It's an approximation, is $2.675 million. That is over approximately a 3-year period is what we're talking about. It depends on where we wanted to borrow the money, and that's all stuff we need to talk about the budget, should the board decide they wanted to move forward with this. That doesn't include the staffing costs. The staffing costs would be $1.2 million for the first year. That's with 12 EMT paramedics based on a 56-hour work week. This includes salaries, FICA, pension, federally mandated FLSA overtime, and insurance for the first year.
Does that 2.65, is that the cost of the building plus including the trucks?
Trucks and equipment.
That's
Trucks and equipment and everything.
Computers, everything, yeah.
I just want to inform the board of something that I asked Lisa to look up for me, and it was interesting, that our building cost for Station 2 that we have paid for yearly for everything to run that building is $29,000 a year. That's what we pay to run Station 2 without the people. And I think Station 3 similar. Yeah, Station 3 similar. So when the building's paid off, we're paying about $29,000 a year, $30,000 a year to keep that station running, fully staffed 24 hours a day.
And we now have a revenue stream in that building from the county for housing their ambulance.
Yeah. Hickory Boulevard, emergency response and water rescue. I think this is dear to your heart, sir, and yours, Commissioner. The Bonita Springs Fire District currently responds to emergencies in Bonita Beach Road from Station 22 located at 2805 Mango Drive. The BSFD Station 22 houses our water rescue boat and crew. A significant portion of the response zones of this station is outside the response time objective of less than 6 minutes, as most people understand. Currently, the BSFD deploys a water rescue resources by trailering a boat and crew to the specified boat ramp or Carl Johnson boat ramp. I did want to say one of the reasons why that is not ideal is because we have to take that boat and emergency lights and sirens down Hickory Boulevard, which is a very dangerous, it's dangerous to trailer a boat anywhere, but to take that on an emergency, it comes, any of the guys who know driving it and the people who live there know it's not the safest place for the citizens to be trailering a boat. The proposed the proposed Hickory Boulevard response enhancement. The property located at 26991 Hickory Boulevard as a station option. A rescue crew of 3 can reduce medical response times by 50 to 80% in this high-traffic, limited access area. Our water rescue deployment can be reduced by 17 to 20 minutes. Currently, BSFD is dispatched to approximately 1 MERT emergency a week. This shows some information here. Can you see that? You need a little closer. You might be able to read it up there too. I apologize for that. But from Station 2 at 28055 Mango Drive to Lovers Key State Park, 8701 Estero Boulevard, is 7.6 miles in 14 minutes. From the proposed station, it's 4.7 miles in 8 minutes. That's to Lovers Key. You can see the outlines. This is the one on the left is the one from the current station. The one on the right is from the proposed station. From Station 2 out to Bonita Beach Club, 25740 Hickory Boulevard, 4.3 miles, 11 minutes, current response time. From proposed station at Hickory Boulevard and Bonita Beach Club, 1.5 miles in 5 minutes. It's a significant advantage. So we always say, well, what does Fort Myers Beach do to that area? Well, coming from their station on, I think he's called that, was it Lennell Road?
Linnell Street.
Yeah, Linnell Road. Been there 100 times, can't remember the name of the road. 6 miles and 11 minutes. So that still cuts it in over half from the proposed potential upgrade to our response in that area. So from Station 2, Mango Drive, to the proposed station on Hickory Boulevard, it's 2.9 miles or 7 minutes. So it takes about 7 minutes to get from Mango out to where the new station is going to be on Hickory, well, could be on Hickory Boulevard should the board decide to go in that direction. So basically, this slide shows an aerial view, if you could see that little red dot there, of where the station is located.
Well, one thing I think we skimmed over a little bit too quickly was the fact that it's waterfront and we can have the boat right at that location rather than trailer it. I think that's a huge advantage to that piece of property. There's not a lot of places, as we well know, we've looked for a long time, there's not a lot of places that you could put something of that magnitude down there. But, you know, besides all the obvious things that we're talking about, having the boat, you know, on a lift and guys stationed there, jump in the boat, that's huge.
Well, we will discuss that, and thank you for bringing it up, sir. We will discuss that because I know former Commissioner Conforti was working on property out there for a long time. I think it was like 15 years ago or so. We never had really any luck, and part of the issue is we do run so many calls out there, and it is a high traffic area, and our response is less than desirable there. If you see that right there, without trailer in the boat, the men and the firefighters can walk out back and lower that trailer in the water, which decreases the hazard to the community of driving that big trailer through for one. Second of all, they can get out in the water in 5 or 10 minutes. How long does it take to get out there, Greg? At this point, I know Deputy Chief Scott's not here, and he was going to do a large talk on that because he's the expert in that area. But I'll turn it over
basically
to
what it
the
is right
Chief.
now, when we respond from our Station 2 to the Carl Johnson, it's about a 11 to 14 minute drive time. And again, that's the boat with the trailer is about 53 feet long. And it is safe, but it is not safe enough. What happens is you're going 55, 60 miles an hour. If somebody pulls out in front of you, you've got that boat and that truck traveling at that speed. With it out back, the other thing that goes along with that, while we're going to the call, there's really nothing we can do. We get to the boat ramp, we've got to back it in, we've got to then go park the truck in the trailer, and then start our call, getting the GPS coordinates, getting whatever we can do, getting the channel from the Coast Guard. With it being out back, the big advantage is, yeah, that little area may be idled, but that whole time while we're idling out to get to open water, we can be putting in these coordinates. We can be getting our life jackets on. We can be getting our if it's a fire response, getting our pump primed and everything. So that's time that's not wasted in driving there, that 11 to 14 minutes.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
you quoted a number earlier, and I didn't catch it, the number of calls that go out there.
On Hickory,
Island? Yeah.
we did not do a number of calls on Hickory Island, unless I don't think we did.
Well,
We
could-
did,
No.
but
Could you do us a favor?
Yes, sir.
And run that, find out how many calls we actually made out there,
Yes, sir.
and include the type of call
Mhm.
and the time of day that that call came in.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
According to your latest annual report, you ran 5 watercraft rescues all year in 2014 and 1 water vehicle fire in 2014.
That's not right.
Yeah.
Calls for the year for vehicle, or for
Yeah.
watercraft rescue.
I don't,
According to your numbers.
yes, I do not believe that that includes our MERT responses. Marine Emergency Response Team responses. For example, if Estero has a fire
Mutual
call, mutual aid, the way it works is like brush fires. We don't send one boat out to a water rescue incident. What we do is we activate a MERT response because one boat is incapable of handling a hazardous situation on the water. So that's why we developed, as we're talking about SOGs between the Lee County Fire Chiefs Association, if Sanibel has people in the water, swimming in the water and their boat's down, they activate the MERT response. That doesn't always necessarily mean that that's going to be a call in Bonita Springs.
So that is countywide, you're saying?
Yeah, that's our activation. When we say we have an emergency call for the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District boat in a MERT response, that's what we do.
So it can be Sanibel or
Sure.
Paradise Beach.
Every North Naples.
Sure, it could be North Naples. It's similar to, you say, how many brush fires do we have here in Bonita Springs? Well, how many do we respond to? We were in Lehigh for 2 weeks, sending a truck out there. So it's the same. If we had a brush fire here, we'd have, I've had 60 guys out east of town from North Naples, the city of Naples, from Cape Coral, so when we talk about when you get a call for an emergency, that's when we're talking about how many calls do we get for a boat emergency for a citizen in Lee County and Bonita Springs. It doesn't always mean that that particular call is happening in Lover's Key State Park. I mean, it can, but it's not always.
So in other words, the figures here are strictly for Bonita Springs itself?
Yes,
And not the county?
not the MERT response.
Or Collier County?
Right, not the MERT response.
Chief?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Can we, in next year's annual report, would it be wise to somehow account for that some way so that,
Yes, sir. We talked about that because when we knew that was kind of misleading when we say
Right.
how many boat calls do we respond to. It's like how many calls do you respond to? You respond every time someone calls 911 and you get a call.
yeah,
That's your response.
even if we're talking brush fires or whatever?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, this is just some more photographs, aerial photographs showing where the station is, as you see in red. This is the actual building. So I think Commissioner McCourt's well aware of this building, and you also, sir. But this building here is owned by CenturyLink. They run a switching station out of the back here. So what that gives us is, I think it's a 3-bedroom condominium up here that's been vacant for I don't know how long. It looks like it's been vacant since the 80s, since we went up and reviewed it. But it also gives parking underneath here for what we would call a light rescue truck and some employee parking if need be. This is another side. This is the same side, just with the entry. You can see the entrance staircase here. This is leaning a little bit towards the back. I'll move through these a little bit, just so you get an idea. Actually, that's in front. This is an overview. This is where the dock space is, which is one critically important piece to this property, is right here. And we can fit our boat and a dock back here. And also you see the access here out to Hickory Boulevard.
That's a no-wake zone back there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll try to keep the men from wake surfing back there. This is it again, just to give a few different angles of the operation. So here's where we are with this. I know some people, or even me, think, well, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I just want the board to be prepared if this situation comes up. Now, we have spoken with CenturyLink. In fact, the fire marshal spoke with them today, and we have reason to believe that they're extremely interested. However, this property is a little difficult for them to try to decide what it's worth and what they want to do with it just by the zoning and what they use it for. So we are currently in negotiations. I think that they, from my estimation, that they do want to do something. But in preparation for that, we did a little bit of analysis. We figure the renovations are going to be about $150,000. That includes the boat lift addition. And approximately 3 people, 1 per shift, with a cost of approximately $320,000 for the first year. Those are the numbers that we have at this moment. We could talk about them more. So to wrap it all, go ahead, sir.
Well, would CenturyLink, they would still continue to use the back end for switching, right?
Yeah, in any regard, whichever way we decide to work on it, they would still want to use that as a switching station. There's a multitude of options that we can use. Lease, buyback, lease to own. We could buy it and lease it back to them. So these are all options that, once we begin some talking with them, and in fact, what they want to do, and talk about some options, then we'll work on it. And also, we have been in discussions with the city on what we'll need to do in order to make this happen. I don't want to go into the specific details right now, but the city's willing to work with us, and we're going to work with them to make this happen, should the board decide that it's something that they want to do. So, in summary, the staff offers an overview of the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District's current and future geographical emergency service challenges. It is the intention of the staff to inform the board of these challenges and offer the data necessary to make an informed decision regarding the life safety of our community. So, if there's any questions, I'll take some questions.
I'll throw one more at you, please.
Yes, sir.
We talked earlier about the idea of what you called a static deployment.
Yes, sir.
And a dynamic deployment.
Yes, sir.
How would you characterize the deployment of the police department?
I would characterize the deployment, well, considering that they do policing, I would consider them,
Apples and oranges.
yeah, I think the police uses a static or a dynamic deployment, strictly. They may strictly use a dynamic deployment.
Okay, I've got to get into what you mean by these then, because I'm not.
Dynamic deployment means they have no station. See, you can have a street corner based unit that is a static deployment. For example, if I have somebody set on the street corner
Okay.
for 24 hours,
Yeah.
that's a static deployment. That's
How about
not a
if they're
dynamic
How about if
deployment.
they're sitting in a vehicle?
It's still static deployment.
That's still called static deployment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If they're in the same spot every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. It's a
Okay.
static deployment if they're in the same spot every day. A
But
dynamic,
If we have an officer sitting in a vehicle and we don't necessarily put him at the same corner every day, then what would we call that?
that, I don't know, that would be a police term. Because this whole system is based on ambulances, not police.
Yes, okay. Mhm. Well, how would you describe then the deployment of EMS systems in a lot of cities where the help is sitting in the ambulance? And they're moved around depending on where they think the calls are going to come from?
That would be a dynamic deployment.
That would be dynamic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
I think in fairness, though, the fire and police is apples and oranges, because fire and emergency medical calls are strictly for that purpose. Police are actually, when they're not running calls, running traffic and tickets and other things that fill in the time when they're not responding to their calls. So I think the dynamic of the two are hard to compare from this type of deployment that we're talking about. I think they're not on the same playing field.
And I would say that we don't have ambulances, and the static dynamic deployment model is something that Lee County EMS has addressed for many, many, many years. And this is the system that they determine they want to use. The fire district doesn't determine the EMS system or ambulance deployment model. We only determine fire response.
But you would if you got the ambulances.
Would still be under.
And
We're trying.
and what would you say your model would be then?
I would say it would have to be whatever the county approved for our COPCN.
So they still would dictate how you handle the ambulances?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Joe, I've got 3 or 4, they're kind of unrelated, but related to everything. On the Hickory Island facility, if we were to lease it with whatever, no matter what, if we end up with something there, are we going to be considerate of trying to not make it look like a station where there's, I would think the neighbors out there would like it to remain more of a residential character than. Is that possible? That's what I'm asking.
Well, what we will do is keep I think, just my idea, which I haven't thought about designs, but I think we'd keep the exact same design that we have there with a light rescue with 3 men on it.
Right.
We won't have a fire engine. It'll be at this point, it'll be a pickup truck with limited fire capabilities. So we're still going to have engines running out there, but just for EMS responses, we won't. But if we get an alarm activation, you're going to have an engine running out there.
Right.
If you get anything, car wreck, you're going to have an engine running out there. But we will have limited rescue capabilities just from the apparatus. It's a mechanic in his toolbox.
Right.
We'll have limited tools on that, capable of handling some emergencies, but not all.
Right.
Therefore, you would need a bigger toolbox for that, which would come from Station 2. But they would be able to respond and handle
Right.
a significant amount of calls with the light rescue.
Okay, next 2 questions go to about Station 6. Did you get it resolved yet with the, on that additional land being co-shared on drainage or retention ponds or whatever?
We are working on that because our model, when it was placed over top of the land, it was a little bit larger than what they had, than they have allotted our area that we had bought. But I don't think that that's much of a problem right now, is it?
Right now, we're trying to change the location of that station to make it work. That was a conversation I had with the gentleman.
Say that again.
They're currently, right now, trying to reconfigure that station on the property and see what they could do for us.
Okay. On the building itself, and I've got one last kind of request or thought. You're probably going to need to allow a little more money than you had anticipated if we had done this a year or so ago, because as Tim knows, the Florida building code is completely different, and it's going to take the firm that's got that standard plan. It won't just be a matter of dusting it off and configuring it for that lot, because everything, especially pertaining to energy, ventilation, how the building breathes, everything is much different as of, I guess it was 1 June, wasn't it, Tim?
I'm not sure when it's supposed to be in effect, but I heard it was going to be either June or July.
Yeah, so it would clearly take that. So that'll mean a little more time in the plan. Lastly, is it possible by the workshop that we could take some of these growth projections and put, here's the additional ad valorem that will come in from those new housings starting, next year, the following year, and all that. I think that'll help you determine when that, the ad valorem would basically float the boat to put the station out there. And I think it's probably within that band of, you said, 2 years,
3 years.
3 max,
Mhm.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
What is it that you're looking from the commission tonight?
I just want the commission to be prepared for the budget meeting, so you know what we're looking at. And there is a key component, and that is time right now. We're running 200 calls out there at this point in time, which is Village Walk and Palmyra. In 3 years, if we move the project down, or do or not do it, whichever one, I just want the board to understand that there could be residents out there having whatever emergency that they're having, waiting a significant period of time that is outside of what our response.
Chief, it
looking
would
like.
be
Yes,
helpful
sir.
to us too, I think, if you could give us the same kind of analysis that I asked for on Hickory Boulevard. What kind
The
of
time?
calls are they?
Yeah.
What time of day do they occur?
Yeah. I know a little bit of that by heart, but I don't want to say it and be wrong, so I'd rather
Yeah.
give you the official documentation.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Going back to Station 2, not Station 2, the fire boat. We have, you're saying one response per week by boat. Actually, we have maybe, that's about 90% of the calls or so are to other districts. Now, do other districts compensate us for those 90% of the calls that we run by boats in their districts?
No.
You follow me? Where I'm getting at?
Yes, they do compensate us. They send us their boats when we need them.
That's how mutual aid works.
It's just
We're part of a team.
However many calls that we ran on our boat, they all came to those too, because
Right.
just because it was specifically in Bonita, those boats
Right.
came in the MERT system to
Right.
us. So
Right.
that's,
so it's
Yeah.
It's mutual
And the best
aid.
way I can explain it is everything that we do in Lee County is done that way. We have a special operations unit. We got 12 of our guys that are on USAR teams that respond to any trench rescue, any large animal rescue, any swift water rescue, all those things. That's our USAR team. Same with our brush fire system. Every other week or so, I think it's 3 weeks, we're in charge of the task force, just in case something happens. We train with the airport because they can't handle a plane crash. They can't do it. They just don't have the staffing. It would take everybody in the county there.
Oh.
So all of this is done in a unified effort between the Lee County Fire Chiefs Association and Emergency Management. Same with hurricane responses, same with anything that we can't handle here in Bonita Springs. And that's very important. Thank you for bringing it up, because it's very important for the people in the community to know that this is a large-scale system, from EMS to special ops to fire to airplane crashes to terrorist operations. This is a very large-scale system that we're under.
So this is a county, really a county-wide system. And if you include Collier County, it would be a five-county system.
I can't speak for Collier County.
we've spent enough time on this.
Yeah. The ladder, the new ladder truck, we still have got the old one, right?
Yes, sir.
It's kind of like a reserve in case.
Oh, no, we don't have a reserve ladder truck.
No.
No, sir. I thought you meant the
No.
truck 25.
Okay.
No, sir.
Does that conclude your?
Yes, sir. Whatever the board's
Okay.
done with me, I'm fine.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Very good.
Next item on the agenda is old business. And under old business, I think we left something up in the air at the last meeting on discussion of electoral boundaries. And I believe that, I'm fairly sure you sent that legal opinion out to everybody, so that we don't need to probably spend a lot of time on that at this point, because it pretty clearly says we can't do it.
Mr. Chairman, after reading those documents, the most important thing that I got from it was that the elections will be held at large as dictated by the state law.
That's exactly, I think we all feel the same way on that. I mean, the law is the law, so. Unless we have any other discussion on that, I think we can move on. Under new business, we need an approval of an update to policy 605, military leave. And I don't know if everybody's read that over. Chief can probably give us a quick summary.
I'll let the Assistant Chief do it. He worked on this, so.
Yeah, basically what this is an update of our policy. It allows a person to go on active duty and then for the district to subsidize the pay that the military is giving him for housing and for his monthly accrual. So that's what it basically is in a nutshell.
Isn't that covered under federal and state law? My understanding, even though I read over the change, most of that is dictated by federal law anyway.
Most of it's dictated by federal law, and all we're looking for is just to help out if anybody wants to go and serve the country, is what it is, and to help them out. We still have to keep their job here. We still have to do all that. That's done by federal law. So all
Need a motion to accept this change?
I'll make that motion.
Huh?
Fred, you go ahead, you make it, Fred.
Oh, I just made the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do you have anything else for us, Chief, under your report this evening?
No, sir. I think Deputy Chief Giuliano just wanted to touch on a couple things.
And Chief DeWitt
Yeah.
had something too, I believe, right?
Basically, what I wanted to bring up to the board is what we've done in the last couple months. We've showcased some different things we've done here at the station. So I guess we're going to turn the lights down a little bit. Hopefully it'll be over here, Antonio. Basically what we've done is here's some training that we've offered at the fire department. And it's aerial apparatus. It's a 40-hour class that we taught in-house here with our instructors. Subsequently, oddly enough, we just got an email today that Sanibel is doing this same class with a different set of instructors where they're charging $150 per person to come in and do it. For us, we gave it to anybody of our staff that wanted to do it, and we opened it up to Estero and to San Carlos, and anybody else. We had three firefighters from San Carlos come in and take it, and 3 guys from Estero come in and take it. We used both ladder trucks, and here's just some pictures of what they've done. The discussion earlier was about what does a ladder truck do. Well, this is one of them where it can ladder a building, and this is just some pictures of it. But one of these pictures here, this is at the terraces right here in Bonita. Even though it's only 2 stories, 3 stories, that's a 100-foot platform that San Carlos brought down. And it barely makes it to the top like the chief was talking about earlier. It's hard for us to get right next to that building, so we need to have those longer apparatus. But the community was nice enough to let us go out and what we call taking shots at their buildings to see where we're going to place these things. This is at the First Presbyterian Church right here off of Beach Road. So different things that we would use these ladder trucks for. As you see there, that's our ladder truck, our 70-foot off to the front. Subsequently, at the same time we did this is one of the shifts, we do an air management, and this is at the top of one of the high-rises in the back of Bonita Bay. 28 stories, the whole crew ran up there. We only required them to go the first 10 floors in full bunker gear. The entire crew decided to go up there that day. And that's with the crew and the training officer. So that's one of the high-rise trainings that we did last month. The other thing that I would like to bring up, then I'll turn it over to the deputy chief, is I responded to this call when we talked about calls that we have here in Bonita. This right here was a rollover that we had at Burnwood and US 41. 2 cars involved, as you can see there. But again, when the chief talks about we're part of a bigger system, we've got the jaws of life out. We've had to pop this door, and here's 2 of our crew members assisting with the medical side of it. And here we have our other crew members, as you see, dealing with hazards of the call itself. So this is the front end of the one vehicle that T-boned the other, and this is the door we had to pop to get him out because the other door wouldn't open. We had to use the jaws of life on this side to pop it out and bring the person. When I say pop it, we had to use it for extrication. And when we talk about the number of personnel, that took 3 personnel, 4 personnel to show up to do this. We had our squad show up because anytime we have a rollover, we have our heavy rescue or our squad show up, which we, as the chief talked about, it's at our Station 1. It's a jump truck, so with the guys off rescue jumped off of that one, came to there for any added equipment that we may need. As you noticed back on this one, we got a lot of fluids on the ground, so we're going to have to do quite a bit of cleanup and fluid. This is all hydraulic or transmission fluid and a new radiator fluid that is very, very slick on this. You see the airbags deployed, front and side current airbags on this. And still, this is our guys trying to disconnect all the safety features of it. Now that it's rolled over, it's still a hazard to us because if there's any airbag that didn't deploy, it's still live, so that's why we have to go in and disable them. Again, that's us checking to make sure everything is safe. This is our crew right here disconnecting the battery. Even though the airbags in this vehicle didn't deploy, they're still live until we disconnect the battery. And even with that, they're still live up to 20 minutes after they're disconnected with the capacitor that charges them. Again, this is us cleaning it up, like we talked about. And these little buckets is absorbent that we use. We end up using, I think, 5 of those buckets to clean up this mess because, like we talked about, this is very slick. There we are deploying it. And that's just the extensive of it. At this point, Deputy Chief Giuliano is going to go over a few different calls that we've had also.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg, and put the live fire training in. We had an occasion to host Cape Coral Fire Department and Fort Myers Beach Fire Department with some live fire training here at our Station 24. They had some new guys that they wanted to put through their paces. So we were happy to assist them. Go ahead, Greg, just roll through it. Here's some of their guys and some of our guys. We have, excuse me. When we put on this training, we put pallets in our burn building out there and we stoke it up. It gets pretty hot in there and it gives these guys a little bit of reality of what real fire is like if they haven't been to one yet. The fire, there's 2 floors. They do some search and rescue on the 2nd floor, and on the 1st floor they'll put the fire out. So we'll have 2 teams going at once, and then our 3rd team will be outside backing them up as safety. That's an actual picture of what it looks like inside. Once you're in there, it's like being inside an oven. Where your head's at when you're crawling on the floor is 400 degrees. At the very top there, it gets up to 1,500 degrees. On the 2nd floor, it's very hot also. It's almost too hot to be up there. Once it gets so hot, they'll open the door or the window, cool it down a little bit. We had a real good time. We have to have live fire instructors there. Several of us here, including myself, are live fire instructors. And so we are there to make sure everything runs smoothly. And for the state makes sure everything's run per the schedule and everything's got to be done just right. I'll keep going, Greg. I think there's another one there that I was going to show. Maybe not. I guess that's it. But you can see the guys crawling in. They'll crawl in through the back door. They'll bring a hose through, and they'll experience the fire. It rolls over real nice inside when you're in there. It's really good. Go over to the lightning strike. Everybody probably seen the lightning strike on the news, and of course we were there. There was 2 workers on top of that roof there. One guy got hit by lightning, and the guy right next to him got a little bit of residual. That's his hat there, and where that tar paper is peeled up, it's pretty much where it hit. That's his shoe. That's what's left of his shoe. From inside looking up, you can see where the bolt hit. Some workers were inside downstairs, and they got zapped a little bit. It basically went through the roof and went across that stay bar right there, that metal stay bar. Anyway, our Chief Daigle was one of the first on scene. He happened to be driving by. And if you show us, Greg, show us that one. The medic truck's there, and there's 5 people in the back of that truck working on this gentleman. And there was another 2 patients, the critical patients in the back of the truck. Chief Daigle was there, and he maybe could give us a little bit more information.
Yeah, I was driving back to Station 4, and I heard this call come in. It was interesting. So I took a left, like we're saying, you're always on AVL, even though I don't have one in my own truck. I noticed where it was. But I pulled up, and I didn't know where everybody was. So I opened the ambulance door, and it was packed full of 5 guys doing the pit crew routine that we do with EMS. So I was looking at the scene, and I saw a guy holding his leg, and I said, Armand, if anybody knows Armand here, he's a fantastic medic, and he speaks Spanish. So I said, Armand, we got another patient. You gotta come talk to this guy and see if he's okay, because I can't talk to him. So Armand's standing there with 2 drugs in his hands. He's like, okay. He goes, do you mind? He says, it's been a while, but so I jumped in the back of the ambulance, and it's been a long time since I worked on a code. And I wanted to say that with the pit crew training and the utilization of the 5 guys there, we did a good job of getting his pulse back. But I did want to bring up an important point that a lot of the people in the public do not understand. Everybody was looking at the ambulance. Why is it still here? That ambulance was there for 20 minutes, at least. I'm speculating, but at least 20 minutes. So most people think you get in an ambulance and you drive them straight to the hospital. That's not always the case. Drownings, that don't happen. Lightning strikes, it doesn't happen. It's not advantageous for a patient. Cardiac arrest, it doesn't happen. The reason why is because all the equipment that you have in that ambulance to run a cardiac arrest, specifically a lightning strike or something like that we know we have a good opportunity to bring somebody back, you stay on in that call or in that ambulance until they're stabilized. The reason why that happens, if they dump 2 firefighters out of the back of that ambulance and they have 1 or 2 guys driving into the ambulance right now, what happens to that person? They don't have a pulse yet. The best chance they have of getting a pulse is having a full crew work on them for as long as it takes to stabilize them. So we stayed in that ambulance for, I think it was 20 minutes. We got a pulse back, he was stabilized. Then you take him. The whole load and go thing is a long, long time ago, and it's only specifically for trauma. And the reason why it's for trauma is because the reason why it's not that way this time, and it's, like I said, it's call specific, is we have all the capabilities to stabilize a patient now. If you had to take the 15 minutes with 1 paramedic in the back and 1 driver, what happens if they get it going to cardiac arrest again? What happens if they have another critical event? They have to stop that ambulance and get out because it's 10 minutes to the hospital. Every minute of not ALS is 10% of death. So, for example, trauma, they don't need medications. They don't need the medical side of it. What they need is a surgeon to repair the damage from the trauma. So that's why you have the golden hour. But in medical cases like this, and it's specific to the call, and it's a call the paramedic makes, you don't always load and go. It's just not the modern way of doing things. So I just thought that was an interesting point when people say, well, why wasn't the ambulance taken off? Well, the patient was unstable. So either we were going to get a pulse back or call him deceased on the scene.
Chief, one more thing to reiterate. In the back of that truck, there was 5 people. And when the ambulance went to the hospital, it took 2 of our firefighters with them. So there was a EMS paramedic in there and 2 firefighter paramedics to attend that patient. And also, when the chief says everything's in that ambulance that would be inside a emergency room, the same thing goes with our ALS trucks. Our ALS engines, when they come up, has the same equipment as that ambulance has. So when we get there as ALS firefighter paramedics and firefighter EMTs, we carry all that equipment with us.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Frank.
Yes, sir. Chief, I just want to say, job well done. Thanks for saving another life.
Well, it didn't come out that way, but
He hung in there for
we certainly gave him a fighting
quite a while.
chance. Yeah, he was in the hospital for a little while, and they thought he was going to make a recovery, but he succumbed to his injuries, unfortunately.
You hit it?
That's it.
Nice job, thank you. Local 3444.
I just had one thing, Natalie wanted me to remind you, I think she sent you all an email about the parade.
Yep.
She just wants to remind you to get back with her if you're going to be in the parade to organize, they're going to have candy for you to throw, and we can get a driver for you.
Thank you.
If need be.
Can you get a car?
That's up to you guys, as far as the cars.
Commissioner's business. Commissioner McCourt? Commissioner Murphy? Commissioner Forbes?
No, I just want to compliment the chief on the very excellent presentation and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you.
Commissioner Castillo?
The same. I was very informative. Thank you very much for all that time you spent.
And same for me. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Do I have any public input? I don't have any cards, but
Yes, Alex Grant, 11851 East Terry Street. This goes back to last month's presentation on the basic financial statement from the independent auditor. And I don't know how many of you had thoroughly looked at this, but I'm looking at page 51 of that report. And what concerned me was the pension liability. That is for the suppression staff, I believe. It had there the total pension liability ending of $71,343,944, and the planned fiduciary net position ending was $50,022,032 for a net pension liability ending, that was the difference, was $21,321,912. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that an unfunded liability? And if so, then that means that we as a taxpayer, let's say there are 21,000 voters, hypothetically speaking, maybe more, in the Bonita Springs Fire and Rescue Control District in the city, anyway, and that means that each one of us has a liability of $1,000.
To simply answer your question, the way it was explained to me, because we've obviously asked these same questions. Number one, the law changed on a reporting, on an accounting
I
principle,
understand that.
okay? That number there would be if the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District ceased to operate and be in existence tomorrow. That would be a liability that we'd have to write a check for. Having said that, as you continue and you pay into the plan over time, and I think you could probably make an appointment with Lisa to explain the smoothing and everything that's done through the actuaries, because it just makes my eyes gloss over. But at the end of that liability number would simply mean if we closed the doors today and we weren't going to be a special district anymore, or we were going to do something else as a fire department, that would be one of the requirements to do that. We would have to fund that. But having said that, it's spread out over the future, and actuaries look at things for 99 years. We're now in the process of changing that, and anytime you make a change like that, numbers are just, are there.
Okay. Now, going back to another page, this is page 46 of that, the top of that page, it has that the maximum annual member benefit shall not exceed $210,000. That's, I assume, after that 17-year period.
I don't have a copy of this in front of me, and I think that would probably the best thing to do here would make an appointment with Lisa, or actually make an appointment with Ashley Brown to ask those questions specifically.
The third point I have, there is a drop program. There are, before there was, I think, only one individual on the drop program. Now they list 10 members on the drop program, and on another page it had that one of the commissioners was on the drop program, according to what I have here. listed.
Another simple, quick answer to the drop program, it saves the taxpayers in the district a lot of money, because we don't pay into their pension anymore once they go into the drop program. So it's actually a win for the district. The more people that are in the drop program, the less it costs us. And that's a simple answer. The rest of the questions, I believe, should be run through our finance
But
department.
a fire commissioner's on a drop program too?
I think that's an option. I think that's one of the options that you can sign up for if you've been on for a long time. It's not a huge amount of money, but I think we do get a very small pension. So,
But it's not a
anyway,
former- it's a
time is up
present.
on this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Ron Pewer, Bonita Springs. Chief, you did a great job tonight, really very nice presentation. And I hope that I can get some information from, Iris is no longer here.
Can you speak into the mic, please? I can't hear you here.
We can't hear you. You need to speak into the mic.
Iris is no longer, is
She's
she
still working.
retired?
She's still
or-
here. She's still
She
here.
is, good. Well, at any rate, who would I work with about getting the impact fees that you folks are charging now in '07 and maybe in '02? Who would be?
I believe Lisa can help you with that.
Okay, great. And the building inspection fees that were
Yes, sir.
Lisa can
around
give
at
you
the
all of
same
that.
time? That's great. So I'd call someone tomorrow about that.
Yes, sir.
Terrific, thanks. I presented you folks tonight with a complaint that was filed in the state about that topic concerning the Bonita Springs Action Group.
Which had nothing to do with the fire district.
Well, that's debatable. And I would hope that some of you would consider the fact that if the employees with the department have asked for a contribution or a deduction, excuse me, from the paycheck, and that you folks are aware of the fact that the union that represents those folks.
My understanding of that, after you brought that to our attention when I
Yeah.
investigated it, the only thing that comes out of payroll are union dues. And what the union does with the dues is nothing we can say. We have no authority over that. And I think you know
We
that.
understand you don't have any authority, but I think that there may be a matter of ethics involved with that kind of business. For example, if almost all of the employees are aware, because they're making a contribution to the kitty of the PAC, and the union is using, in some folks' opinion, obfuscation and curveballing the whole issue of financing a PAC.
Well,
But
you
if the union is behind it, why don't they use their own local
Well,
union
you
name
filed a
and
complaint
number?
with the elections board, I assume? I haven't read
Yes,
it.
yes,
Well,
and I hope
they'll
you'll read
figure
it, and I
that
hope
out.
it'll come up at the next meeting. I hope it'll be a topic of discussion.
That will,
We can get into a little bit more at that time, or
Okay.
you can. Thanks a lot,
Thank
and
you.
again, Chief, great.
any more public input?
I did have one more thing.
Too late.
Too late. I just did want to make the board aware, I think you're aware of Iris's situation. I believe that now's the time for the district to, Beverly works as a part-time administrative assistant. I'm going to promote her as a full-time, same position, to fill in Iris's position when she leaves, but she's been doing the job now. We need her specifically, so I just wanted to make
That's
the
entirely
board
your
aware.
call. So
Yes, sir.
that's not our call, that's yours. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Steve?